Hi,
Thank you so much for joining us, Brandon.
pleasure
And
to be here.
yeah, I am excited to talk to you about packaging and the past, present, and future of packaging because what's so fascinating to me is your PPC is a family business that's been around for 50 years.
Yeah, my grandparents started it back in kind of like 1970, and to this day, it's actually still owned by my grandmother, who's 92 years old right now. My parents have been involved in the business for 40 years, and so I literally grew up in the world of packaging, learning about plastic resins and neck finishes at a young age, driving a forklift at a young age in the warehouse. And so we've always just kind of been in it. And still to this day, my brother Nolan actually is our VP of marketing. So we're a very tight knit family group still.
That's very cool. So I would say the reason I wanted to talk to you is because we connected and really quickly I realized you're really an authority on the subject of packaging.
Well,
And
I like to qualify that because there's a lot of really smart people when it comes to sustainable packaging, and I'm learning every day. But I'm certainly passionate about it.
sure, sure. But I mean, I think, having grown up and been this being like what you live and breathe every day, you definitely are probably very well versed in, a lot of what's going on. And I'm looking forward to having you share that with us today. Irina read kind of went through your bio, but you probably want to add a title like packaging therapist to.
Yeah. It often the realities of kind of the recycling rates and what's actually happening to packaging and the whole sustainable packaging. There's just a lot of misunderstandings and misconceptions, and um, especially for brand owners and founders that are trying to be as sustainable as possible. Often there's just too many constraints, whether it's economic or just logistical or financial. And so it ends up being this kind of heavy part of, I know you want to get here, but that's impossible. Or I know you think that that's recycled or that's going to be recycled, but it's really not. And so sometimes they're called these packaging therapy sessions. But I always try to leave it on a positive note. So hopefully this conversation will also end on a positive note.
You do. And actually, you had a packaging therapy session with my team last week. We did one with you here at Beauty Heroes. And one of my employees is a student. And she wrote to me after our session. I don't think I told you this yet,
Mm-mm.
that she's been studying nutrition and she's now expanding her major because of that conversation.
That's
So
awesome.
and I'm taking a class on plastics, and I think she might take a class as well. There's some really great, and so your conversation, our session actually inspired her. So thank you so much for that. And
Oh, thank you for telling me that. That certainly warms my heart.
yeah, absolutely. It was Sam on my team who asked the questions in our session.
Cool.
So let's get into it. So packaging, can you kind of just give us like a snapshot of, beauty packaging, past, present, and kind of where it's going, in a broad stroke.
Yeah, I mean, I think, kind of looking maybe 5 years ago and before, the primary drivers in beauty packaging were aesthetics, how it looked, how it felt, and then obviously the functional parts of it, of how it performed, and then cost, considerations. Going forward, those kind of three factors to making a decision on which packaging to go with have kind of moved into the second category. And sustainability has kind of risen to the top as like kind of a primary concern. I know that's certainly happening right now, and I think that's only going to kind of happen going forward. I think often that, while sustainability is a primary objective, those other considerations are just as important. I like to say that it's not good to make sustainable packaging decisions if it's an unsustainable business model. So making sure that we're looking at all factors when it comes to beauty packaging and making the best decision. But in terms of going forward, I think sustainability is going to be here to stay.
Do you feel like companies are making a little bit of a concession on cost to in order to make decisions that are, for more sustainable options.
Absolutely. And there's a few studies out there that have kind of indicated that consumers are willing to pay between 15 and 25 to 30% more for a product if they know um, that it's a more sustainable packaging solution. And so I think when we're consulting with brands, we're saying, okay, how can we kind of spend a little bit more on the packaging to make it more sustainable if we need to go that route? Like using PCR right now is more expensive, post-consumer recycled plastic resin. And so if we do that, can they increase the price to their customers to be able to make up the difference?
Yeah, yeah. And so, what about on the supply side? You work with probably packaging manufacturers from all over the world. What are you? How have you seen the evolution of that side of the industry?
Yeah, so I mean, we like to take a really global look at the entire value chain. So everything starts with the customer and kind of makes its way back. So customers right now in the clean beauty space are certainly asking for more sustainable packaging. In that way, brands are trying to respond to it, and thus the packaging industry is also responding. So what we've seen in the last few years is minimum order quantities, or MOQs, are dropping very quickly for more sustainable solutions. Again, like PCR. If you were to take a PCR mist sprayer or like a dispenser, in order to kind of create a PCR outer for that packaging, we would have had to use like 250, 300,000, or make 250 to 300,000 units in the first order. That MOQ's dropped all the way down to like 25,000 to 50,000, depending on the manufacturer. And I see that continuing to go, that it'll be easier and easier for manufacturers to be able to make more sustainable packaging solutions for indie beauty brands that are looking to make those decisions. I also think that in the space, there is more room for crowdsourcing opportunities. So multiple brands that are kind of using an item that maybe has a really high an MOQ, like a black treatment pump. Well, if everyone can agree, say, hey, I need 10,000 of these, I need 20,000 of those, and we can get 10 of those together, then we can all go in, take advantage of that buying power and do something like that. And I've learned about a few platforms. One is called Novi, Novi, that is kind of trying to organize that and putting together. And I like what they're doing so far.
Yeah, that's great. And in terms of innovation, are you seeing your suppliers come to you and say, hey, we've been working on this. We have something that is better that your clients will like. Are you seeing a lot of that?
A lot. Yeah, it's now that the industry has slowly recognized that sustainable packaging solutions are going to be here to stay and it's going to be a part of the future. That's when the innovation really starts to happen. So whether it's expanding the use of or changing formats like airless, we're starting to see more and more companies go into airless units that have a glass outer instead of a plastic, and then there's an internal refillable component. We're seeing refillable, reusable components in lots of different formats: deodorants, color cosmetics, bottles, jars, airless units. So that's certainly exciting. And then PCR. I mean, I'll keep coming back to it. I really believe that if we have to use plastic because another material isn't affordable, or we can't use it, then using the highest percentage of PCR is the best option. Not the bioplastic resins, not sugarcane resins or hemp-based plastic, which the CBD and kind of cannabis industry really want right now. But using as much recycled content is really the best solution, because it's just going to impact the entire supply chain. As the demand for PCR goes up, then the entire industry has to respond to it.
So, yeah, tell us a little bit. Why don't you just go into PCR? Why you think that's such a good, the best option, and dive into it a little bit deeper, because I think there is this sort of misconception, and that was really what I wanted to talk to you. What are the misconceptions when brands come to you? Are they saying, hey, I want to repackage and I want to put everything in bioplastic or sugarcane plastic? I've seen this. It sounds really great. It sounds better for the environment. I want to get out of plastic. And you tell them, actually, PCR is a better option, and here's why. Is that Is that fair or?
Yeah, I mean, so there's kind of two ways of looking at the sustainable packaging um, kind of industry as a whole and solutions as a whole. So one, you have the sales and marketing side. So it's from a marketing perspective, it's really fun to tell your customers that, hey, this plastic was made from plants, um, and so I'm not coming at it from the marketing perspective. I'm coming at it from an actual what is really going to make an impact on the planet and what's really good from that standpoint. And so from that standpoint, if we look at just plastic waste, the, the it's let's just say 1 billion packaging units are kind of produced every year. Plastic beauty packaging is kind of produced. Almost none of those are recycled. So we need to be real honest about that fact right there. Even if it's a monomaterial color cosmetic or a monomaterial tube, none of those are formats that our current stream are really collected, sorted, and recycled. So there's the therapy session part. uh, and first step is admitting we have a problem, right? And so and so the reason that I really believe PCR is the best way is so as we use more post-consumer recycled plastic resin, the demand for it is going to go up, which means that the entire supply chain needs to capture more plastic before it goes into landfills and into our oceans. They need to capture it, sort it, recycle it, process it, turn it into that resin again that then can be resold to manufacturers. And so that's really the important part, is that we're not just looking at the short-term marketing gains of how to market this to our customers, but we're saying, all right, we're kind of a part of the global problem. And what are the individual decisions that I can make to be able to kind of help in the aggregate? Like, how can we get everyone to do that? So that's really, I think, where the solution lies. And that's why I would say that, again, if you have to go into plastic, just use as much PCR as you can.
And what about aluminum? Let's just touch on that.
Sorry, can you say it again? It cut out just for a sec there.
Sorry, aluminum. Can you
Oh
talk
yeah,
about if somebody's like, hey, I want to try to put everything in aluminum. I don't want plastic.
yeah,
PCR, you know, I think aluminum's cool. What do you say?
yeah, yeah. So we love aluminum. Uh, and these are just some of the considerations that I would kind of throw out there. Is that aluminum is the most recycled packaging material on the planet. We can thank the beer and soda can industry for wanting to recapture that material and recycle it. Because aluminum is mined, it's really expensive to go do that. And so if you have a robust recycling system, then it makes it more affordable to be able to process the material. So it's really just an economic thing that why aluminum is so heavily recycled. The thing that we have to be honest, and this is again kind of just the part that's most often not understood, is that the aluminum recycle process was built to capture cans. And so anything that is a larger aluminum bottle or jar that's about the shape of a can or bigger will most likely be captured. But if it's smaller or it's in a different format, then it probably won't. And so I see a lot of people saying that aluminum tubes are going to be recycled. And in almost every MRF I've ever talked to, which is a manual recycle facility or machine recycle facility, the they don't go through and look for aluminum tubes to be able to recycle those. They actually intentionally remove the tubes from the recycle process and send those to the landfill. So I would say that if you're going to go into aluminum, look at the entire process, know what is going to be recycled and what's not going to be recycled, and then label it accordingly. I'm I'm actually of the mindset that if we know from a packaging professional, packaging mindset, and from a brand standpoint, that if you know your packaging is not going to be recycled, don't put recyclable on it. That's
I was just going to say that
yeah.
there's a difference between recyclable and this will actually be recycled.
Yeah, and it's because we've asked the wrong question. We've asked the easier question: is it recyclable? And the technical question to that is, yeah, like almost everything is recyclable. Like there is a way to be able to recycle almost anything. The better question is, will it be recycled? Or how
Right.
likely is this to be recycled? And then we can't stop there. We have to say, okay, so it's likely to be recycled. How is it going to be recycled? Where is it going to be recycled? And when is it going to be recycled? because I mean, if anyone on the call or watches this, I encourage you to go to Netflix and watch some of the documentaries are there, because they're really insightful about, where our curbside pickup waste has been going for, many years and isn't going anymore. China used to buy all of it, and they're not anymore, and so it's um, yeah. Anyways, it's an incredibly complex problem, and doesn't have a silver bullet solution to it.
Yeah, it was really, I'm located in Northern California, which is kind of an eco hub of the United States. And
Mm,
we have a pretty, what we thought, what I, what we think is a pretty robust recycling program. Everybody composts here. It's totally normal. And 60 Minutes did a segment on the green wall, and actually went to Recology, which is in my county. Happened to go to San Rafael and interview. They were doing their investigative reporting, and they talked to the COO of Recology, and he was in this massive warehouse with bundles and bundles of recycled plastic. Like, they bundle it up into these big blocks, and they just asked him, well, now that it's not going to China, where is it going to go? And he said, several different countries where they're shipping off this material. And the question was, well, does it actually get recycled there?
mm,
And his answer was, we don't know. On 60 Minutes, which I thought was really sad, that the COO of this Recology is a major company. Obviously, 60 Minutes would interview them, and they just don't know. People don't know. And so it really is that sort of concept of wish cycling, that we've definitely bought into it here in California. We recycle everything. We feel really good about ourselves.
yeah, yeah,
And even at Beauty Heroes, we have TerraCycle bins in our warehouse. We have TerraCycle bins in our store, and we're really wishing that these things all get recycled.
yeah.
So I think it is a misconception, and hopefully, progress will be made in the coming years. But I think it's a really interesting thing for companies to not. I think this is an opportunity, really, for beauty companies to and beauty heroes even to say, hey, this is actually going to be recycled, and here's why. And we chose it intentionally because it is recycled and it's maybe made from PCR, and this is the reason why. I mean, these are really opportunities to have deeper dialogues with customers. And yeah, so I will just contribute that. If there were 2 to 3 things you would want everybody in the beauty industry to know about packaging right now, what
Oh,
would
that's a good question. The first one would be the incredibly low recycling rate of all the packaging. Um, I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions that is out there. Two, and we already kind of touched on it, would be authenticity and honesty win in the long run. And any greenwashing or misleading of customers about how sustainable the packaging is that you're putting it, that you're using, um, is obviously detrimental to the world and the environment. But there's also going to be a cost to that in terms of customer loyalty and trust. And so I'm challenging the beauty industry constantly, and when it comes to packaging, is just to be more forthright, like be more honest about what's actually going to be happening here. How to Label is a great group. They're connected to Green Blue, and we're a part of the Sustainable Packaging Coalition. And but it's a way that it's basically a systematized way of labeling packaging that's more accurate. And so if something isn't, yeah, it's How to Label or How to Recycle. It's one of those. I'll get the link, and maybe you can add it to this later. Um, but that's it, it's so like, instead of saying that a monomaterial tube is recyclable, so just toss it in your curbside bin, it says check locally, or it'll just tell you throw this item away, which is probably the better way to do it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so for brands that want to really, I would say, do the best option, and say cost is obviously an issue, right? Because like you said, it doesn't make sense to be sustainable if you can't have a sustainable business. But if they really want to make a difference, what can they do, or what should
Yes,
they do?
yeah. This is probably like the best question to ask and the hardest one to answer in a format like this, because every brand is going to have different constraints that are going to limit what to kind of go into. But and so what I would encourage everyone to do is, if you want to become more sustainable, talk to someone that is in a similar space that I'm kind of in, that packaging distributor role that's really focused in on developing the best solutions for their individual situation, and doesn't have any direct kind of manufacturer relationships or connections that are kind of skewing their advice toward one direction.
Right.
Because if you ask an aluminum guy this question, they're going to be like, go aluminum. And if you ask a glass person, they're going to go glass. And so having that, having that kind of unbiased advice for your specific situation is obviously best. From a general standpoint, I would say that focusing in on reducing the amount of plastic waste being produced in the beauty packaging is probably the best goal. Uh, and so that would mean using, more glass, more aluminum, more paperboard and fiber. Those types of materials and substrates, when they end up in the landfill or in an ocean, are going to cause less damage than if they're plastic. And again, if you have to go into plastic, use as much PCR as possible. So that's the really simple version to that question.
Yeah. Um, do you have a couple of, sort of case studies, without naming any brand names? Obviously, brands are protective about, their process and their packaging journey, I would
Yeah.
say. But do you have a couple of good examples you could walk us through, where somebody came to you and then you help them either achieve their goals or get to a better place, where they were feeling like we made a real improvement in our company and our packaging?
Yeah. So there's, I'll share three recent examples that I think highlight not only a change in packaging, but kind of a shift in the way they were thinking about it. So one has to do with the way they were labeling their monomaterial tubes. And so monomaterial plastic tubes, they were doing a lotion or um, um, it might have been a sunscreen actually. But anyways, they were labeling their tubes because they had moved from a coax tube or a multi-layer tube to a monomaterial tube, so they could label it as recyclable.
Mm-hmm.
Well, monomaterial tubes are never recycled. They're always removed from the recycling process, or 99.9% of the time. And so the only change we made there was in the labeling of what the customer should do with that item. And so on their tube, they say, listen, even though this is recyclable, it's not going to be recycled. And so please throw it away. And that change in the labeling, I thought was just really cool to be able to see. It's still early, so we don't have feedback from the customers on it, but so far, I think that was a really good example there. And I think more brands should actually follow that example, and in that way. We've had two other projects that looked at their use of dispensers. So one was a lotion pump and one was a treatment pump. And we were able to take their current one they were using, and basically maximize the amount of PCR that was used on the outside, going from zero, virgin plastic to up to 100% on one of them. And again, what was kind of cool there is one was using a white and the other was using a black. Well, the black is best when it comes to PCR because it's kind of dirty plastic color. But we spent a lot of time trying. So that brand actually was an easier transition, that product. The other one, the white, was really interesting because this it's actually really similar to this one right here. So they wanted to go into 100% PCR, but the industry kept, the supply chain kept producing kind of dirty PCR, and so we couldn't get to that bright white. And so, but we got close enough to where their aesthetic design team said, you know what, we're okay with where it's at right now in order to use this. And so there was a shift in their thought of saying, although we want really bright white for our brand, we also want to do the right thing from a sustainable standpoint. And so that was the industry pushing to try to create as white as we can right now, and then them kind of meeting us where the industry is to be able to make that transition. So um, those are three, just kind of off the top of my head.
Do you have some success stories when it comes to refillable packaging?
Boy, that's a tough one. The Most of our projects have happened in this last year, so I don't have any sell through data in terms of like how successful it's been. But I will say that the demand form is going up. Other numbers that I've seen from other products that we haven't done, just that are out in the marketplace, have been pretty good. The challenges is just consumer buy into a new packaging format. And then often the most successful ones are ones that have a subscription model to it. So like a refillable deodorant stick that is just got automatically sent every month or so. We are helping a brand go into that airless unit that we were talking about, and they're switching it into a glass outer with an inner kind of refillable part that we're trying to make out of that 100% PCR again. So I think that one's going to be really successful. But we'll kind of see. It's still kind of new for us.
I can add a little bit of experience at Beauty Heroes. We have several brands who have been really going into refillables, and obviously, I really believe in being an early adopter for those kinds of things, helping to get consumers to try things. And it's hard. I would say it hasn't been. It's you would think. I think consumers, especially Beauty Heroes customers, they're very conscious consumers. They definitely care about these issues, but they also, the refillable options. I don't know. They don't. They somehow don't. They haven't been well adopted. They
Yeah,
haven't been loved and accepted and been like, oh, great, this isn't refillable. I'm going to buy more of it. We haven't seen that yet. I think, refillable has a long way to go in terms of, making it so that it's got, a good feel, and it's, sort of a similar experience, but we haven't
yeah.
really seen that yet.
I mean, I'm encouraged by what Loop, is Loop by TerraCycle is doing. I know that they just went national in the last few months or so, and
Yeah.
adding Canada too. And so that's truly a circular model. It's the old milkman model, or however you want to describe it, to where the packaging is never entering, the waste or recycling stream. That's the goal. The goal is to get to a point to where the packaging that we're putting in, or that we're done with, that we're disposing, isn't going into the waste stream. That it is either being, you know, um, captured, cleaned, sterilized, refilled, and then reused again. Or if it's not doing that, it's being captured by the recycling process. And that's the circularity that I think our entire industry and the beauty industry is really searching for. The challenge is that we're going to have to be patient. Um,
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is I think beauty, personal care, and then like kind of everything else. Like Luke's doing a lot of food and, kind of your laundry detergent and your stuff that you don't care so much about experience with that. Like you're not misting it on your face. You're taking pasta out of, an aluminum can, and it's all, they're doing really cool things. I think when it comes to beauty, it's so much like packaging is part of the experience. It's part of the
yeah,
wow. It's part of it's more than functional, right? It's emotional. And so it's got this, deodorant's a great example because you don't have this sort of emotional connection with your deodorant. You're just like, I want it to work. And
yeah,
if it comes in a refillable container, that's great because now, but I just want the deodorant that works for me. Whereas, your face serum or your face mask, or there's an element of emotional and branding and feel and dispensing. Just functionality is so important when it comes to beauty because you're
yeah.
applying it. so personally.
And
So
there's an expectation from the consumer that if you have a high quality product, that it should be wrapped in something that feels high quality.
yeah,
And that if it's a budget low quality item, then it's probably wrapped in something that looks and feels low quality. Um, the challenge is often those low quality appearing items are the ones that tend to be the more sustainable options, and the robust double walled plastic ABS like items are the ones that are causing the most harm or are the most difficult to be able to capture and recycle.
yeah. So give us the good news. What will we start to see in the next 5 years or so? What's coming down the road, and what can we look forward to in terms of new innovation and good opportunities to do better as
Yeah.
companies?
So I think the first good news is recognizing that this isn't a fad. In the packaging industry and being around for 50 years, and we have a lot of people here that have been around almost that long. Um, they've seen this fad of sustainability come and go. And so when it kind of first peaked this time, it was kind of like, yeah, people will talk about it for, a couple, a year, and then it'll kind of fade away. So I think the first step and the first really good news is that consumer demand and awareness is there and the industry is responding to it. And so it's not going away. So that's really, really good news. The second kind of mindset or kind of positive outlook on this is that sustainability is not a light switch. It's not something that you can just flip on and be like, I'm sustainable now. Um, the journey kind of to be sustainable shouldn't even really to be described as that, because it's not a destination. It's not an endpoint. It's just the process of becoming more and more sustainable. So when we see it more as a journey rather than a destination, every little decision we make can be a move toward that direction. And so if you're going into, let's just use a PET bottle for example, that has a really high recycling rate, and you're currently using green plastic, green PET plastic. Well, if you were to switch to clear PET plastic, that would dramatically increase its likelihood that it's going to be recaptured, recycled, because the demand for clear PET is far greater than green PET. So it's not a great decision, right? It's not lighting anyone's hair on fire, but it's those little micro decisions that I think every brand can kind of make. And that if we all work together like we are right now and moving in that direction, then the progress that we'll start to see and feel in the world will be in the aggregate of all of us kind of coming together and making progress at the same time. So that's my cheerful part.
Yeah. Great. Well, it was, I think I know you have a really sort of open door for people who want to talk to you, learn more. You're really, in my interactions with you, you're like, I just want to help. And so, for anybody watching this and has some packaging challenges, if you want to contact Brandon for your own therapy session,
Yeah,
or
I'm
to learn more, he's got just a ton of resources. You are on the Credo Packaging Council. You said you have a list of resources you can share with people for different issues or concerns that they're trying to work through.
Yeah, so my approach to this is, I'm looking at the next 50 years. Being a part of a legacy business, I'm like, how is PPC going to be a part of the solution? And so I love to donate and volunteer a lot of my time to help brands craft a strategy forward. And if PPC can be the company to supply those solutions, great. If we can't, for whatever reason, whether it's quantities or timelines or cost or whatever, then I'll connect that brand founder or whoever it is with the manufacturers or with the other companies that can supply their needs. So I'm here to help. I'm a free consultant or resource as you kind of want to see it. I'll give as much time as I can. So if you just want to, go to our website and fill out the form or send me an email or find me on LinkedIn, I'd be more than happy to talk to anyone that wants to help be a part of this fun journey to become more sustainable.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brandon. Thanks for sharing your expertise with us today and being a part of this beauty conversation. I really
Th-
appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everything that you are doing at Beauty Heroes. It's awesome to watch.
Thank you. Yeah, we're on the journey too. It's not a destination. So
Yeah.